I'm John, and welcome to Edgetone Studios. So, if you've been following along, I've done a 7-part series so far on restoring a console, which is now sitting in front of me in my studio. Well, I've decided to sell it. Now, there are a number of factors that led me to getting this console in the first place, and there's quite a few that have led me to make this decision to move it along. So let's go back to Christmas last year. So it was the end of 2022. We were just finishing up the last few songs of our album, and I got this notion into my head that I wanted to have an analog mixing board instead of a digital mixing board. And the primary reason was I was trying to think of a way to simplify my choices and make it easier to make decisions and move quickly in the studio. And the main thought I had is if I had a consistency of preamps, that they were all the same rather than combining analog preamps that are external to the digital mixer with the built-in preamps and then having to decide which analog preamp I was going to choose to go with. It would simplify my processes, that if I had a really nice quality analog preamp across all my channels, I wouldn't even be questioning which preamp to use. I'd just go, I got an amazing sounding preamp, let's go. And that was kind of the concept behind it. And I did a bunch of research, and I sort of landed on probably getting a Trident board, probably a 24 channel, would do everything I needed. And then I put the cost together and realized it was going to cost me around 50,000 Canadian with cabling, with audio interfaces, etc. And yes, I'd recoup some costs from selling some gear, but that would be it. So I gave up on that and decided to standardize on my external preamps being all the SSL 6CH from their Big 6 and 6 series mixers because they had a built-in compressor. I thought that'd be kind of handy too. And things were ticking along, and then sometime in late February, early March, I saw this local ad for this Sony MPX console, and I thought, wow, he's not asking a ton for that, and I wonder if it'll be working. And even if it's not working, it probably wouldn't be that hard to fix up. And it's probably too big to fit in my studio. And then I started researching, and that led me down the rabbit hole of finding out all about this console, but also sort of measuring and determining that I could make this fit. It could work. But in the back of my mind the whole time was this feeling that maybe it's just a bit too big for my space. Maybe it's just not quite right for me. So the project kicked off. As you saw, I worked through a bazillion issues. I got quite into it. I got very frustrated with it at times. I kept thinking, am I really going to do this? And I thought, well, I can sell it at any time, or if I fix it up, I could sell it after it's fixed up. It's just in the garage. It's not taking up space in the studio. But it was bugging me because it was in the garage. It was in the way of being able to use the garage as a workshop. And it wasn't yet in the studio, and I hadn't yet heard it. And then fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, I just make the decision, even though I'm not 100% yet, let's move this thing into the studio and get in place. And now that it's been here, I have some sense of what I do and don't like about it. And I kind of knew these pros and cons before, but something pushed me over the top last week. So everything was possible with some niggling cons that were bugging me. One was the massive size of it. It's really taking up more space at the front of the studio than I intended. Hello, kitty. And it feels cramped. And in order to make full use of it, I still need more external gear. I was going to build a sidecar beside me, and that would feel even more cramped. I've got a keyboard on one side for composing. I need something up here. I can't reach my external gear from the seated position without rolling a distance. Yeah, not a big deal, but I can't do in mix decisions with my hands and my ears in the mix position and just reaching to controls. I have to move out of the mix position. So that was kind of bugging me, but I thought, no, I'll get it hooked up. I'll get the cabling done. So I went out for a quote for the cabling, thinking, ooh, and it's going to cost another like $700,000, maybe $1,500 for the external cabling. Plus, it's going to take me a couple weeks to solder my own cables for the internal, but hopefully it won't be that bad. Well, the quote came back, and it was a realistic quote. The company that was doing it for me is a great company, and it was $3,000. And that really pushed me to the point of, okay, now what do? Do I resolder all the cables myself? I still need, several $100s worth of parts that I don't have. How long would that take? I've got a couple bands waiting to record. They're going to be on hold until I get this done. And suddenly I realized, if I just put everything back how it was, I'd be all set up, ready to go. I can make whatever changes I might want to make and reconfiguring that, and I can move this thing along. And that was it. I had that, when you go to make a decision, you can't decide one way or another, then you finally make the decision. And if you finally make that decision and you're still feeling like it wasn't the right decision, you still question it. You're always going, is that the right decision? Well, I mentally made that decision and instantly felt this sense of relief come over me. Like, oh my God, I can just set things up as I had it before. I can make a couple little tweaks that'll make things a bit nicer, and I could sell this and give it to someone who's got a big enough studio to make some use of it. And so that's where I'm at. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about, that decision. And I wanted to do it now before this weekend, because this weekend is JohnCon, which is my gaming convention. And I may have done a video on that. I'm recording this before I record the video that would be released for that. So I made a list of pros and cons just to sort of help me solidify this decision. And so the pros I have is the quality of the preamps. They sound amazing. They're super clean, no noise, lots of headroom. So that's fantastic. There's also great EQs built in, hands-on EQs. That was part of it. The quality of the master section's headroom is just quite insane. There's lots of room for, boosting many, many channels through that master section. The stereo imaging sounds a little bit better than I had before. I wouldn't say it's amazingly better, but I did notice a distinct difference in the stereo imaging. And just having direct hands-on controls to auxiliary sends and functions without having to go into multiple layers in the digital mixer seemed like it would be more advantageous. However, I've already mentioned the massive size of this thing. The cons that come to mind is that it's daunting in the studio. I can't do everything from the mix position. Okay, you know that with a console, you're going to get up and press buttons way over there. But it's a stretch to reach things like the control room volume. It's a big stretch to switch speakers. I used to be able to just reach across, switch speakers. It's lifted my Amphions up about 4 or 5 inches, and now they are a little bit too high for a listening position. So that would mean building something to tilt them downwards. Again, not insurmountable, but I didn't like that. The sidecars, as I said, are too far away, and I would have this extra sidecar beside me, which would just sort of cramp me in a little bit. I'm not really looking forward to that as well. And I've lost the space where I hang my basses that I tend to play at the front of the room directly plugged in. I keep one to either side. Interestingly, on the digital mixer, I would have more total inputs simultaneously, and that's because this is a 36 channel mixer. The digital mixer is 32, but it also has 3 additional inputs. If you watch my video on the PreSonus mixer, you can take the 2 aux-ins and the it's like what's the other one, there's another return, I can't remember what it is, that allow you 3 more stereo inputs, which give 38 inputs, which are all simultaneously assignable to headphones and things like that. Whereas here I can get the extra inputs through the 2-mix return or the tape return, but in order to assign that to a channel to, say, send to the headphones, I would have to patch it in and patch it to a particular channel. So there's that. There's way fewer aux-ins on this, so this only has 6 aux-ins. One's a stereo for headphones. The PreSonus, of course, has 16. The power consumption will be higher. I don't have any ratings on that. It has put out a little bit more heat. There was one day I came in, I'd left the automation power supply on. I came back in and realized it had pumped up a couple degrees in here just because they were both going. So I knew that was going to be an issue all along. But overall, it's not that warm. You know, it's a warm console. It hasn't been that warm. It's just with the automation supply on it, generates quite a bit of heat. There's also additional costs on top of the cabling. I still need some other external effects and gear and effects that I was going to put together. Plus, I still need a number of TT patch cables. Everything I have is 1/4 inch. That's how I'd been set up before. The TT patch cables are not cheap. I guess if I found them used, I could get them cheap. And if I switched back to the digital console, I get all the benefits of the digital console, like saving scenes, saving sessions, digital scribble strips, user mode to rearrange the controls to whatever order I want, full integration with Studio One, which I did quite love. Okay, to give you an idea of how massive this thing is in the studio, I'm standing at the very back wall without zooming in. I'm just using 1:1 camera ratio, and that's kind of the bulk of the space this console takes up. And as you can see, the amp fins are pretty high in the room, so that's been part of the issue. If you get a side shot, there's not a lot of space here to either side. Like I said, I used to hang my bases there. I took one of them down. The other one is also down, but the hanger's still there. Yeah, I just think I'll feel a lot better with the let's zoom the other way. With the old desk here, it fits right in the sort of space between the panels there. It's just going to be a better workflow for me. This thing is still pretty amazing though. It's another shot of the whole console working. It looks great in here. If my studio was twice the size, 1.5 times the size, it might be a lot better. So yeah, I came to this decision. I started thinking about it, and I started thinking, oh my God, there's going to be so many people watching my channel that are going to be so disappointed because they want to hear me mixing through this console. But I have a whole bunch of people descending on my house starting tomorrow, many strong backs, and that's the ideal time to take 20 minutes to move this thing back out of here into the garage. And then next week I can set everything back up and be ready to do some recording on the 18th, which is when the one band wanted to come in. So that's where I'm sitting. I'm sorry to disappoint people. I may already have stock footage of pulling this out of the studio if we film it tomorrow. And yeah, that's where I'm at. And well, as I'm taking this beast apart and moving channel strips down to the garage, all I can think of is all the people are going to be disappointed that I didn't stick with it. But, you know, it's not right for me. It's not right for me. And I can feel it. So, still so cool. What can I say? I'm a crazy man. But, you know, I think one of the things is when you take on a project and you get certain distance in, there's this thing that you may have heard of called the sunk cost fallacy. And the sunk cost fallacy is, well, I've put so much money or time or effort into this thing that giving up on it would be worse than continuing with it. But if continuing with it is the wrong decision, then that's a fallacy that the costs are worth keeping what isn't going to work right for you. So for me, it's not going to work the way I want it to work. If this console had been smaller, then I probably would have gone for it. If I'd somehow found a used Trident that was, you know, under $10,000, because that's about what I'm up to in terms of costs, I probably would have put it in place and continued with it. But because I could have used my old desk, I could have dealt with all those other issues, like the distance between things, the extra space is taking up, all that. So keep that in mind as you're moving forward with anything you're doing. If you think that you have to continue with something because your money's in it, or you have to get your money back out of something, or your time back out of something, you don't. You can dump anything at any time to make space to move on to do something else. And that's what I'm going to do here. So hopefully I'll be able to update with my new video series I was talking about before. This also was not the surprise I kept talking about. I didn't bring that up yet. I had mentioned before that I had a surprise coming. Well, my surprise was I was going to buy a second one of these consoles because David up in Nanaimo has one, and I thought I would buy his for the parts because I was worried about the power supply dying at some point in time, and that way I'd have spare parts, and also could take all the best parts of his and put it in mine, and then make mine the ultimate one and leave the rest to be parted out or sold as a separate console. So that was also weighing on my mind heavily, that I didn't have the funds to be doing that. I mean, we had a deal, but it just, at the end of the day, was not going to work for me. It wasn't the right thing for me, and I know it. Like, I can feel it in my gut. I'm a little bit disappointed. I'm a little bit sad that, you know, this thing, I missed that other pro, because the other pro of this console is it looks amazing, right? But, you know, audio is not about looks, right? It does look amazing, and it's cool. It's super cool, and it's got a history to it. And I still will do a follow-up video on the MXP and its history and everything else. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for those of you who subscribed. And I'll sign off. Next time you see me, I'll be coming to you through my digital beast again. Cheers.